Welcome back. Now let's talk about Unit 7 parallelism or parallel structure. So we talked about parallel structure as basically a upgrade that you can include in your writing because the sentence might be grammatically correct, but it just sounds a little awkward or not balanced properly. So you might have seen comments before from English teachers or other teachers on your school assignment saying that a phrase sounded awkward. This might be the reason why. It wasn't parallel or it wasn't balanced. And parallel structure really focuses on what parts of speech you're using, how many there are, and what combinations you're using in your sentence. And so you're trying to repeat patterns. Really, English grammar is quite formulaic and mathematical when you analyze what types of words are used in sentences, what combinations, and what order. All right, so we're going to talk about the three main rules that we should consider if you are looking to see that your sentences are parallel. And again, it doesn't mean that the sentence is bad if it isn't parallel. It's not a very well-written sentence. It isn't balanced or crafted, right? So from a more artistic perspective, it's poor writing if it isn't parallel. All right. Parallel structure should be used when elements are joined by coordinating conjunctions. And again, that's kind of why I had the list up here of coordinating conjunctions, fanboys, just to help remind you. And so you're going to look for the coordinating conjunction in the middle of your sentence or in the middle of the phrase, and you're going to look at the phrases on either side, before and after the coordinating conjunction. So I am allergic to the dog's hair and how it smells. How it smells. So we have the dog's hair, we have nouns, and then we have a subject and verb. So subject, verb, and nouns, these are not parallel, these are not balanced. So instead, we're going to have, I am allergic to the dog's hair and its smell. So something belongs to the dog, the hair belongs to the dog, and the smell also belongs to the dog. Now it's not exactly the same because we're using an apostrophe S to show possession, whereas here we're using its to show possession. Functionally, these words do the same thing, even though they aren't in the same category necessarily. But the point is, it's parallel because the types of words on either side of the coordinating conjunction and are parallel, right? All right, moving on. Parallel structure should be used when writing elements in the form of a list or a series. Now, it doesn't matter if the list or series is a bunch of adjectives or a bunch of nouns or a bunch of verbs, the same rule applies. So here we have, in the incorrect one, the employer valued respect, comma, honesty, comma, and being on time in a candidate. So we have respect and honesty, these are nouns, and then being on time is a gerund phrase, or it just sounds a bit awkward. We didn't talk about gerunds in our class, but the point is we have a verb with ing here. It's very different from these nouns, respect and honesty. So if there's a way we can change it, even if we have to use a synonym or, replace a full phrase with a single word instead, as long as the idea is similar, if you can have your parallel structure in a sentence, that's better. It's a better option. So the employer valued respect, honesty, and promptness. Now we have noun, noun, noun. That's parallel. That's much better. If there were some other way of saying respect and honesty as like a verb with ing, then we could have that here and here as well. But obviously that's not as easy, so we're just going to switch it to noun, 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 and it's parallel. The third rule to consider, parallel structure should be used when comparing or contrasting elements. So, for example, A is better than B, or X is less than Y. A and B should be similar parts of speech. X and Y should be similar parts of speech. If you aren't using, nouns and nouns or verbs and verbs, then you're not having it parallel on either side. So James enjoys reading more than to write. So we have ing even though reading and to write are both verbs, we have a form with ing, and then we have a form without ing. Why? Just make it balanced. Make it sound balanced. Make it parallel. So what we can do is we could say James enjoys reading more than writing, or I could say James, we didn't really say enjoys to read. I mean, we could, it sounds a bit strange, but James enjoys to read more than to write. It sounds strange, right? But the point is, if you can have two infinitives, to read, to write, or you can have two verbs with ing, reading, writing, either one would sound better than mixing a combination of verbs with ing and infinitive to it. Right, so that's parallel structure in a nutshell. There's a lot of practice I'd posted earlier on Moodle for web links to chompchomp.com. So it's the Grammar Bytes website. That would be good. And again, you're just going to see options in sentences of which one would be parallel, which one would not be, right? So you don't necessarily have to identify that each word is, for example, in here, noun, noun, noun. You're not going to be asked to label them as nouns. You'll be given an incorrect sentence and then three options below of what the correct sentence would be, right? Like make the sentence parallel. So while you don't have to say this is parallel because there are three nouns in a row, you do need to be able to recognize when a sentence is parallel and when it isn't. And this can be done by just trying to say the sentence out loud and hearing how awkward it is. And if you aren't able to recognize it as awkward, then you would need to default to recognizing it as a group of nouns or verbs or adjectives, that sort of thing. All right, now coming back here, notice that this is underlined. It's trying to autocorrect it because it acknowledges that saying enjoys to read sounds strange, all right? So even the computer is telling you, hey, that sentence sounds awkward. So that's why this is the better option. It's correct. Moving on, Unit 8, Agreement. I had put up a slideshow, a PowerPoint slideshow of information on agreement. This unit I spend the least amount of time on because it's pretty straightforward. People learning English as a second language might need to spend a bit more time on Unit 8, but otherwise, most of this stuff comes naturally. I'm going to point out a couple of little details that might not have been addressed in the grammar module online. So Unit 8 Agreement, we are looking to make sure that the information as presented in a sentence is not sexist. So we're going to be talking about what pronouns are being used, and then we're also talking about agreement in number, so whether something is singular or plural. Okay. In the grammar module currently, and keeping in mind it was created for the whole school to use and not just for our course, it's for the whole English department. There are a couple of things in there that I don't quite agree with. And I just wanted to explain why. So when you are writing and you don't know, let's say you're writing a policy for the workplace, every employee needs to remove his or her food from the shared fridge by Friday or it will be thrown out. Something like that, right? His or her. He or she. This is just a little bit clunky, clumsy. You could replace three words, his or her, he or she, replace those three words with a single word like they, them, or their. For the sake of efficiency, it's also a helpful way to avoid acknowledging that you don't know someone is male or female based on their first name. For example, right, you see someone named Alex, or you see someone named Leslie, Sam, words like, or names like these can be used for men and women. And so you don't necessarily know right away, right? Like if I see a student name and I haven't met the student, is Alex here? Does anyone know if they will be coming? Right? If I don't know if Alex is male or female. So it's not so much about being sexist in your agreement. It's more about being efficient, and saying he or she or his or her just sounds a little bit clunky, clumsy, awkward. So just be efficient and say they. Next, number, singular or plural. I have some sentences below showing what I mean. These ones are very obvious, very easy to see. We wouldn't say he are studying for the test. We would say he is studying. So by singular or plural, I want you to think back to elementary school grammar class if you were studying French or a second language of some sort, right? I am, you are, he is, she is, that sort of thing. Make sure that you're using the correct form of the verb with your pronoun or with your subject, okay? They always study for the test, not they always studies for the test, etc. Moving on, when I'm saying singular or plural, just to clarify, he, she, and it is singular, they and we are plural. The pronoun I and you, those are a bit different because you can be used as a plural or singular you. I could talk to you as just one person, or I could talk to you as a whole group of students, all of you, right? So I'm not going to include those in the singular or plural. It's kind of obvious depending on how you're using it. But where agreement gets a bit more confusing is when we start using indefinite pronouns like each, either, one, several, every, few, both, some, one. This can change the sentence. You might think that when you say the students at Cambrian College, that's plural, right? Obviously, they use. We wouldn't say they uses. That's fine. However, instead of saying the students, if you decide to say all of them and you say every student, even though your phrase every student means it's plural, it's a large group of people, as soon as you add that word every or any of these indefinite pronouns, it's changing it to a singular. Every student uses Moodle. So pay attention to those indefinite pronouns and make sure that if you have one in your sentence, that your verb reflects that correctly. And the last point that I want to talk about for agreement, group nouns. So by group noun, I mean a class, a team, or a family. So we're talking about groups of people or groups of animals, groups of things. Okay? They can be singular or plural depending on the sentence, depending on how it's used in the sentence. And so unfortunately, this is one of those things where in English grammar, there is no simple rule to memorize. It takes a bit of practice because there are so many exceptions to the rule. So my family cheers for Barcelona. My family, that could be 2, 3 people, that could be 35 people. It doesn't matter. It's a collective noun. It's a group noun. And so it's considered singular. It cheers. He cheers. She cheers. My family cheers for Barcelona instead of cheer, right? My family cheers for Barcelona, or they cheer for Barcelona. Yeah. The team plays in Toronto. The team, even though it's a large number of people, they play in Toronto. The team plays in Toronto. So keep in mind that this will require a bit of thinking. If you're using a new indefinite pronoun, something that you're not using very often in your writing, pay attention. Now you'll see the computer is underlining this mistake. The team play in Toronto because team is a group noun. Yeah. Okay. So that is where we're going to end there for review. This is a 3-page Microsoft Word document, and you can find it on Moodle. And like I said earlier, you can use it as assistance